Okay, let's see if I can do this video quickly. This is a video about predicting the future. What should we be listening to? Should you be listening to me looking at things and telling you dates and all this kind of stuff? Should you be listening to anybody telling you dates and that kind of stuff? What got me started down this road was the other day, these last few videos I've done, I've ended up looking at a character called Jonathan Kleck. And I don't really what to say about him. He's got some great ideas, and I'm kind of in the same sort of area as him, looking at, there's similar ideas there, and there's, I mean, it's always going to be similar because he's talking about, dealing with the negative side, more angels and demons side sort of stuff, but we're dealing with fictional, the negative aspect of reality. Now, I don't really, even though the ideas and some of the stuff he's saying and everything, I agree with some of quite a bit of the stuff, but the way it comes across, let's put it this way, I'm not, to put it in a new age kind of way, I'm not vibing with the dude. I'm not, the way he comes across is very, it's very sort of end of days, and I'm not vibing with that at all. I'm not gelling with it. And what makes me do this video is, as I've watched a few of his videos, I'm now getting stuff that, more videos from YouTube sent my way. Anyway, I clicked on one, was a guy basically slagging him off for making predictions. Now, the guy that was slagging him off was a smaller channel, and he wasn't happy that Kleck had made a prediction, and then, something hadn't happened and all this stuff, and Kleck never really made the prediction, and the guy admits it in his video, and so he's I don't know, the point of the video is kind of lost once he starts saying that, and the guy's kind of he's not really making much sense. But I thought it was interesting, this idea of looking at somebody, because this guy was belting on like, oh, false prophets should be stoned and all this stuff, I'm thinking, well, I mean, realistically, if you're going to believe anything that anybody tells you, you're really in the wrong place, And I'm thinking, yeah, I can see your point of view with him, and I can, I'm kind of all over the, thinking about this now. I'm thinking, I wonder if people will take this the wrong way when I'm down the rabbit hole looking at dates and looking at things to happen and destruction of this and destruction of that, and I don't want to come across as some kind of bloody mystic Meg with a bloody crystal ball, fortune telling, and cross my palm with silver, and this is what's going to happen, and oh, I can protect you, and all. I don't want to come across like that. Well, I'm going with my kind of analysis of what's going on. What I'm trying to do is pick interesting bits and bobs that I'm seeing in my life, that other people might see as well. I see a lot of stuff that's personal to me, numbers and things like that, and just for example, like the positions that I played when I was a kid playing rugby. What I mean? Those, just little things like that in my life, birthdays and things like that, that are wouldn't mean anything to anybody else really, but I know there's a significance there. I know that there's definitely a higher consciousness weaving the fabric here. I also recognise that there's a bunch of nutters out there that are also weaving their own fabric over the reality as well. What the purpose of that is, I'm going to save for later in the video actually. But what I wanted to do is touch on this. You know, this guy was super upset about what Clegg had you know, said or predicted or whatever, and I just thought it was interesting because we're you know, this is really the problem with reality right now. Is you take somebody else's thoughts. So this guy took Clegg's thoughts, and then he's taken it for gospel, right? And now he's like, oh, I was fooled, or I you know, basically comes back down to being fooled again. He was fooled, and now he's upset about it. Now he's mad that this guy said something, and he's got fooled about it. And this is the ego trip that we're all in right now, is this thing of not being able to let go of. You've got to come to the realization that you, as an individual, you are responsible for what you believe. And if you want to believe something that somebody says, there is a likelihood that you could be fooled. So what you need to do is, when you're going to believe something that somebody says, you need to develop a relate. Now maybe this guy had developed a, you know, some kind of relationship that he believed Clegg. But you've got to really, I would say, have a very good relationship with somebody before you just go ahead and start believing them. Sitting watching a YouTube video is not a good relationship with somebody. Actually, physically knowing somebody is a better place to be having a good relationship with somebody. Actually knowing their points of views on things, actually knowing how they live their life. That's a good place to start with deciding whether you should believe somebody or not. So this is the issue we have with reality, is everybody's looking for answers, but yet we don't want to explore the possibility of being tricked all the time. I don't know what that is. I don't know why aren't we, you know, when you look at something and you say, oh, they've just told me that this happened, can I confirm that when I wasn't there? Can I really confirm it? You can't really confirm anything unless you're there in the flesh, in the here and now when it's taking place, or you have somebody that you really trust that's in the here and now when it takes place. So the issue that I have is, I don't want people thinking, number one, that I'm a mystic Meg trying to predict future catastrophes. And we'll look at what these catastrophes really are. You really shouldn't take anybody's word for anything unless you really know that person, unless you can really trust them. Even then, there's always a chance that what you're hearing, what you're interpreting, is incorrect. You know, you heard it from a good friend that heard it from another good friend that heard it from another good friend, and now you've got the Chinese whispers going on, and you've heard something completely. The donkey has 3 legs. No, that's not what I said. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. You know, you've got this is the problem we have, is people the foundation of people's beliefs are now on hearsay of somebody they don't even know. You know, forget about stoning false prophets. You should be throwing yourself down in the pit to be stoned for being a retard and believing what somebody else said. You know, and I know that's harsh, and I know we all have that ego trip. You know, when somebody's tricked you, it's just like, it's a hard one to swallow. You know, you're like, son of a you know, it is a hard one to swallow. But you know, and then you want to blame them, and then you want to, you know, the best thing to do then in that situation is you have to put that thing out. You have to get rid of it. Cast it out. And then you have to say to yourself, I've been fooled. Why have I been fooled? Now, why did I listen to what that person... Why do I listen to anything anybody says? You know? And that's when, once you get to that point, things can start... I think things start looking up. Anyway, so what I don't want people to do is when I'm going down the rabbit hole here, exploring stuff and saying, oh, yeah, I'm picking out a date here for something maybe to happen, you know, 1st of October. It's a good date, you know. It's the kind of way the system works with the a memorable number that's already in people's mind, you know, and you know, and I start picking out a date here, and then I pick out another date there, and then I say, well, I think, you know, the Hoover Dam's going to get destroyed in some way, you know. I'll just take a step back for a minute, and because I drive my family nuts when I start talking about, you know, oh, you know what, I've seen some bits and bobs here, and boy, it's not looking good for the Hoover Dam at some point in time, you know, and I'm seeing this date all of a sudden, you know. You cannot take anybody seriously that starts saying things like that. So the point is, you shouldn't take anybody seriously. You shouldn't take me seriously. You shouldn't take anybody seriously that starts saying this sort of stuff. Now, if you want to go look at the stuff yourself, this is the point of the videos. If you want to go and look at that stuff yourself and say, "Ow, he's got a point here. That looks." Now, I don't think he's reaching too much on that idea, and that idea there, well, yeah, that makes sense, and you know, all these sort of things. You can make your own mind up, and you should make your own mind up. At the end of the day, all I'm doing is picking out fictional stuff, pulling fictional ideas out of the system, and then making up a story about, you know, what I think might happen. You know, there's nothing to say anything will happen. All this stuff that I'm seeing could simply be, the purpose of it could simply be to awaken people to the symbology, the symbolism, the metaphors that are all there. Could just make a nice story in order for us to understand what we're really trying to find here, which is balance, but trying to come out of that illusion, the fictional waters that we're held in. We're still in that womb. We're still protected by Mother Mary. We've not come out into the world yet. We're Neo in the little egg capsule thing. That's a whole, and I don't want to lose that from, you know, talking about these things. I don't know if I'm making that obvious enough, that that's the whole purpose of it. The reason why I see so much stuff when I'm looking at this, you know, right now while I'm looking at the Hoover thing, the reason why I see so much stuff is because practically everything references this in the world. The point of reality, to come to balance, to be able to balance the negative and the positive. And when I say the negative and the positive, I'm talking about the fiction, to be able to balance that fiction with the material world, to be able to balance those two things. It's the whole purpose of reality, the whole purpose of this place. To become like God, to be in the image of God. What's being in the image of God? The image of God is being balanced. You know, I mean, you know, I'm not... Even when you get into the more twisted, like, ideas where, you know, when people are going on about, oh, changing the DNA and doing all this, that, and the other to capture you into, you know, it's all metaphors again for, you know, for this control of the fiction. I don't know, I didn't have a good example. I shouldn't have started even on that, but anyway. So, I mean, the point of all these videos is to really try and point out all, you know, it's just everywhere. just absolutely everywhere. And yeah, I'm still going to pick out certain dates, and I mean, we've got like a dozen dates coming up for things to happen. To do with, because I've just happened to see a lot to do with the Hoover Dam, and so there's a dozen dates between now and next year, and then there's also a dozen years when stuff could happen, and then let's even get down to what might even happen. Let's think about 9/11 for a minute. Did a couple of thousand people really die at 9/11? Ask that question to yourself. Start thinking, why would a bunch of psychopaths go to the trouble of dropping those buildings right in their footprint? Why would they bother? Why bother dropping 3 buildings in their footprint? I know. Why bother with it? To glean something from a trick? To glean some kind of power from a trick? Why bother dropping them in the footprint? There's a reason why those were dropped in their footprint from my perspective now, and that was because everything had to be completely 100% controlled. 100%. The people that run the world, they have the same understanding of how reality works probably as I do. Everything works from balance. This is the whole as above so below thing that people get all bent out of shape about and say, oh, the devil this, the devil that, the as above, all this stuff. It's all about balance. Karma, whatever you want to call it. What goes around comes around. Everything has an equal and opposite reaction. An eye for an eye. This is how reality works. You do something bad to somebody, that debt is going to be repaid. It's the same way, as I like to say, it's the same way as natural law works. You don't do anything to somebody else that you don't want done to yourself. The principle of natural law is, don't hurt somebody else, don't take their stuff, that's it. So the idea here is, if the people that are pulling off all this stuff, or these so-called psychopaths, firstly, you've got to get a whole bunch of psychopaths together, which I don't know really if... Is it possible to even get that amount of psychopaths together? I guess it is. You see certain people do little pranks, and basically a trick is a prank. And you do see people club together, group together to pull off a prank on other people, and they don't seem to have a problem with it. And so at some level they are psychopathic. Maybe we're all at some level psychopathic, I don't know. But getting that many people at that level together that are psychopathic enough to do that, I don't know. Now, these people at the top, they understand the principles of at least this reality, and probably of the reality of the entire whateverness there is out there, which is balance. For something to exist and not exist, there has to be balance. It just has to happen. I know, it's a paradox, but it has to happen. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that these people believe in karma. It's my opinion that they believe in karma. It's my opinion that if this group of people should harm one person, now they've got to pay that price. So, you see where I'm getting at with this question of how many people got harmed in 9/11? It is entirely possible that there was 0 fatalities in 9/11. Now people will be screaming at the screen. It's complete. I don't know. I don't know how many people died. I wasn't there first-hand experiencing that. I wasn't there firsthand taking notes, counting bodies. Did anybody go and grab the people that jumped from the building, you know, off the ground before the buildings came down, to check whether they were actually a real human or a mannequin, for example? Did anybody check that? Does it not seem a bit strange? One of the guys coming down in a hangman pose all the way. I don't know if he came down all the way like that. Were people flailing as they came down, or was it just a body fall? I mean, I haven't really even looked at it anymore. Because you get to a point where you just say, it's nonsense. You know, if we get to a point of saying it's nonsense, now, if these people believe in natural law, if these people are doing this for a purpose, ritual purpose, now all of a sudden, they can't harm anybody. Now all of a sudden, if somebody does get harmed due to what they're doing, they've got to have made it plainly clear to the people that come in harm's way, don't do that. I.e., them telling, pull your men out of the bit, you know, get your firemen out, get your firemen out, get your men out of the building. It's coming down now. That's it. Get out. Don't try to fight no fires. They probably never even went in there in the first place. That, you know, it's all just a play. You know, it's just a Hollywood production. But you have to get to that point of asking the questions. Then you start asking questions about everything else that's gone on in the past and how real it really was and what really happened. And the only way to really know is to be there when it happened. I don't know. So anyway, the point of what I'm saying is, if these people don't really want to harm people but want to make a big statement and really want to give the illusion of harming people, because let's face it, if you're in the prank in order to glean some kind of power from it, the point of the prank is to do something that people think is real but is not. So there's nothing in a prank of killing like 500 people and then saying it was actually, you know, saying it was 2,000 but actually only 500 people died. You know, there's nothing in that. The prank is, the trick is, the only power to be gleaned from a trick is when you've done it without, you know, just changing the figures around. That's not really a trick, is it? The trick is doing it without, you know, 2,000, 3,000 people died. Nobody really died. This is probably far out for some people that are watching this, really. But I don't know. I don't know. You know, I mean, there's no... I mean, I know there's probably people slagging me off right now at the screen, but there's no real point in slagging me off. I mean, do we know? That's the question. Do we know either way or what? Again, it comes back to this believing what somebody's told you. You really shouldn't believe anything that anybody's told you if you don't know them. And then even if you know them, you really should have developed some kind of relationship with them to where you can trust them before you believe anything they say. The idea of just meeting, you know, I mean, even just meeting somebody briefly and then trusting what they say, you know. This is the problem. This is the problem. The problem is believing something that you don't know for a fact. And you can't know anything for a fact without actually physically doing it yourself. Or being there physically yourself. So, you know, we're at a point where people will be screaming at the screen at me, yet they don't know. You know, you just don't know. Anyway, I'm going to come to the point about the Hoover Dam, because this video's, you know, waffling on now. What I would imagine, you know, fiction story here in my head, what I would imagine the event would, and the thing that keeps coming to my mind with this thing is that James Bond, A View to a Kill, with the Zoran thing, and there's a scene in there where the lake drains and there's a guy in a fishing and he's just sat there in a drained lake Like, what happened to all the water? This is the kind of scenario that I'm envisioning. You know, there's a reason why they just put a Deadpool outlet or suction pipe or whatever lower down in Lake Mead, right at the Hoover Dam there. There's a reason why they did that. In all likelihood, there's a reason why they've allowed the level of Lake Mead to drop so low. There's a reason behind that. You know, they could have easily said, we need to keep all this water in, we cut off these people downstream from their, you know, irrigating crops. You know, they could have easily done that. But they didn't. They deliberately brought those water levels down. And they've deliberately put in now, as a result of that, they've deliberately put in a Deadpool suction pipe that will take water from a lower level. I come back to the Viant Dam that I talked about in Italy. And what happened in that situation was just the top portion of it was knocked off by a landslide. You know, like a tsunami little wave thing. Knocked the top portion off that. And we're told that several thousand people died from that. Which, if it actually happened as a natural thing that happened, that could possibly have actually happened. And then we get the mimicry with the Hoover Dam. You know, and you know, it's just, I don't know. Maybe because it's happened, it's already in the consciousness, and it's easier. I don't know. I don't know why they do that. Maybe because it's already happened. There is that clue is already there for people. You know, so they pick a similar event to happen because the clue is already there to the trick. So, back to what I would envision this is what I would envision would happen. This is the way it would go down. Number one, I would not be worried at all. The same way as if the Golden Gate scenario happens, I would not be worried at all there either. You are not going to be going over that Golden Gate when something happens to it. You know, that thing, if there is cars going across it, there'll probably be remote controlled cars with dummies in, you know, if they're going to be filming it at the time. You know, it's that kind of, what I would envision for the Hoover Dam. I know this sounds crazy, but what I'd envision is something like this. A crack forming, some kind of weakness developing in it, and them having to evacuate people in harm's way first. And then, what I would further see happening is I wouldn't see the complete annihilation of that thing. That's not going to happen. And in fact, in one of those Kleck videos, he talks about, look, the top of the dam's missing here. And the Viant Dam, the top of the dam came off. The whole thing didn't just disintegrate that you see in the films. But they put that in the film, you know, because it's not going to look very good if just the top few layers of bricks fall off, you know. Oh, well, it's concrete, but you know what I mean. The point of it is to demonstrate the metaphor or the clue to what's going to happen. Now, what I would envision happening is a crack developing, them evacuating everybody out of harm's way. So and warning everybody, if you go back in there, you could get harmed. Once they've done that, they're clear on natural law. You know, they're clear on, you know, their conscience supposedly is clear. And then what I'd see is maybe the top part of the dam collapsing. That's what I'd see. And you'd see some water coming over, and you know, they probably only just enough to make it look good. You know, they've probably all got it figured out. You know, how much do we have to blow off the top of here? Where we're going to have the line where the top comes off? It's probably already been designed into the bloody thing itself. You know, and all these, you know, when you look at the construction of it, and they used cooling tubes going through, you know, steel tubes going through the dam to cool it, where they pushed, I believe they just pushed water through to cool the concrete as it was setting up, because if you don't know, concrete gets pretty hot when it's setting up. When you pour vast quantities on, it's going to get hot. Well, funnily enough, we just left that layer of tubes empty and filled them with TNT, and we're going to blow that level off. That's what I envision, you know. So when I talk about all these things, when I start predicting dates, it's all pie in the sky stuff anyway to begin with. You shouldn't believe anything anybody says to begin with. Belief should be based on, especially fictional belief, what you want to believe as an idea, you've really got to think about, and the implications of that. And really, belief should just be based on what you can physically determine for yourself. I went down that road a few years ago with the flat Earth stuff. Oh, it's flat, it's flat, it's flat. That's, you know, it's kind of one of those stepping stones that you go through. And I think there's still a video on there from a year or two ago about me looking at the moon, and I'm still not happy with the way the moon looks in certain times of the day, in certain positions with the sun. I know the story that they tell about why that happens. I understand, or at least can conceptualize why that would work. You know, the moon looking a certain way at a certain time of day with the sun. But something in the gut, and this is what is happening with everybody, there's an inner knowing that knows that there's something just not right. And so you apply it to whatever you're looking at the time. You just know there's something not right. And so I went down that route. And then you start realizing, well, hang on a minute, these flat earth people that are checking out stuff, you start realizing, well, that test they're doing, that probably wouldn't work anyway. You know, like shooting a laser beam across a lake. You know, you know what I mean? You know, you start realizing that, do you really even know how light travels? Do you even really know? You know, you start putting a basic idea of how light moves across a lake. You know, you start factoring all these things in. You realize that when you start looking at just basic science, you start thinking, hang on a minute, they don't actually really know what the hell they're talking about. You know, when you start listening to some people talk, you know, people still think that electricity is little electrons moving through a wire, or they think that a light is traveling is a photon. They still think this stuff when it's not that. And if you apply some basic theory to this sort of stuff, you realize, you know, it's not true. But there's an awful lot of science teachers out there that believe that kind of stuff. I don't know. I don't even want to delve into that. But very difficult. Anyway, what I want to point out in this whole video, the highlight is, why do we believe what we, you know, that's the question we go ask yourself. Why do we believe what we believe? Should I believe anything anybody tells me? You know, you might think, oh yeah, Dan sounds alright, you know, he's not completely nut. Well, he might sound a bit nuts, but he doesn't appear to be completely nuts. But, you know, you don't know me. I could be stark raving bonkers. You don't know. Like the same way as I don't know anybody else. So you can't listen to people. You know, and this is the whole problem. This is where we fall into the trap when we start listening and believing things. This is what everybody does with the birth certificate and the legal system and all the rules that are generated by other men. They believe it's gospel now. You know, people have an absolute shite understanding of the legal system. Absolutely shite. They don't even you know, I mean, most people, you know, if you ask them, well, how did we develop, you know, they don't even have any history on the legal system. Not that you need a history on it, but you know, they don't even know where laws are developed from. It's you know, I mean, if we were to teach everybody natural law at school, the world would be a completely different place. You know. Anyway, you know, you just start asking these questions. Then you start asking yourself, well, I wonder, places like China, I wonder if it's really as bad as, you know, the media makes out, you know, all the oppression and the communistic oppression and all this stuff. And I bet you if you could somehow just get dropped into the middle of China somewhere, just out, you know, with the locals, it probably ain't that bad, you know. Say it goes all these communistic type places, you know, how Russia used to be and all, you know. I bet you it's probably not quite as bad as we're led to believe, you know. It's all, you know, fear mongering. That's what it's all about. And unfortunately, I don't want to be a fearmonger. You know, the destruction of the Hoover Dam doesn't have to be an issue. It doesn't have to be something to be fearful of, because in all likelihood, there won't be anybody in the vicinity of that thing when it collapses, unless you're, I don't know, thinking you're some kind of do-gooder that wants to go and save people. And that really, they're the only people that may have got injured in 9/11, you know. But again, you know, maybe there was enough staff at that event to keep those people out of there. I don't know. I really don't know. There was definitely a lot of people that did come to physical harm. You know, I mean, even just breathing that dust in, that's physical harm. So there has to be a level of, there is a level of physical harm, but whether or not it comes down to actually taking somebody's life. And you know, don't want to sound too harsh here, but when we live in a system that is so out of balance, and this may be another point that these nut jobs take when they do these things, is if you're willing to live in that system that's out of balance, then now you're at a point where you've accepted anything that the controlling system wants to do, you know. So maybe a bunch of people did die. Maybe they, you know, maybe a bunch of people will be in harm's way, but I doubt it. I doubt it, based off of how these people work, based off of, you know, when you see these videos of judges that aren't willing to stay in court, they get up and leave when there's a mention of a real living man that they're supposedly dealing with and maybe harming. They know if somebody is being the man that they really are, they know they shouldn't be they shouldn't be messing with that guy. They know it. And so, like I say in my other videos, if you can go high enough up the chain when you deal with these people, you know, if the cops come knocking at your door, say, oh, hang on a minute, let's get this all sorted out, you know. Who's the guy that's given the orders here? Who gave you the orders, you know? And if you can go high enough up the chain and just say, I don't want you to make a mistake here. Now, if you can go high enough up the chain, say, let's go talk to that guy. Just let's go talk to him, you know. Let's sort this out. Now, of course, I'm digressing again. I was doing the conclusion of the video, but you know, this is the reason why the system chooses psychopaths to run the system, because you've got to have a certain element of nuttiness in order to follow through with stuff that just ain't right. So, you know, I've just harped on about whether could 9/11 be completely, you know, people dying and it can be completely hoaxed, you know, and nobody died in it, all the way to, yeah, maybe a bunch of people died in it. But it does beg the question, why bother dropping them towers right in the footprint? I don't know. Maybe it's to do with making the thing look so obvious that it, you know. I mean, anybody that's cut down a tree, that's not many people, but anybody that understands a little bit about how things fall over will know that, you know. And that's what that's what 9/11 was about. It's not about maybe in the mindset of those people, maybe it is about bringing in a new world order, a one world order or whatever. But maybe it's about the two sides of reality that you perceive. When you perceive these two things as a separate thing, it's very difficult to balance them. Are they even balanced when they're separate? They're not really separate, but when we perceive them as being separate, are they balanced? Difficult to know, because when you're perceiving one thing, does that make the imbalance? Does that cause the imbalance? I don't know. Things to think about. But the whole point of that, really, and this is why you've got the new tower that sort of has the extra sides on it. It's the two merging as one. Well, what that's trying to demonstrate is this. You know, a cross. When you take the two and balance those two things, you end up with the cross. I take the positive aspect, you know, the positive aspect. I don't like, you know, I mean, I'm getting to the point where I think I shouldn't talk in terms of positive and negative. But I take the view that what that is showing us is a metaphor for, you know, you've got to get rid of this false perception of two separate things and balance those two things. That's what it's telling me. It's a sort of, it's an enlightenment type thing. When you start to really think about what this reality is and what, I don't know, when you sort of come to that understand, when you get to a point where you're like, you know, you're not really worried about dying anymore. You're not really worried about, you stop fearing stuff as much. You know, I mean, of course, if a bear comes piling through the front door here, yeah, you're gonna crack bricks. But you know, you really stop worrying about it all. It's an interesting place to get to. It's the same place that Jesus probably got to. He just wasn't worried about it. You know, he had a, you know, you get to a point where you just, it's just it's all just an illusion, really. You get to that point, and then you start, and so it's not such a big. When you see these big events, as terrible as they are, I don't know. You don't have to be scared by them. I don't know how to put it into words, really. It doesn't have to be such a. It doesn't have to be so traumatic, if you want to put it that way. Yeah, I know there's people screaming like, "Oh, you don't know what the hell you're talking about," whatever. But doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. Anyway, I'm finishing the video. I've waffled on and on and on and on now. Get ready for some more dates. I know my family's looking forward to it, you know, but I don't know, you know. It's just, you have to, I guess, put it down to entertainment. Hang on, I got a phone call here. Anyway, I'll sign off. I'll see you later. Cheers, bye.